Okay, let's move on. Good luck with all of that. So, is there something you guys want to talk about before we go home? Yes.
That's kind of boring.
Of course it is.
What are Hegelian dialectics? Every time I look up a definition, I have no idea what it's talking about.
I'll give it to you in a very, very simple way. It's a little cheesy. I don't even know what that means, but I hear people saying it. So imagine that you and I, well, you're alone and single and pathetic and depressed and miserable and all of that.
So hard to.
Yeah. And imagine I'm in the same position. You know, single, lonely, pathetic, miserable. So these two forces, you and I, collide. Our singleness goes away, misery goes away, depression goes away, and everything's replaced with paradise. But you happen to be an ass, but I have fallen in love with you. And eventually, you leave, or I leave, and I fall into depression. That's the consequence of being with someone who's wrong for you. Time passes, and I run into Richard after like many, many, many years. And then, after a few months of being together, he looks at me and says to me, Amir, you're so mature. How did you get this way? I said, well, you know, I went out with this jerk whose name was Matthew many, many years ago. He abused me, harassed me, ABCD'd me, all sorts of things. And I was depressed. I was on drugs. I got drunk every single day. I got into fights. But little by little, I began to understand my relationship with him and why I got involved with him. And through those observations, I became aware of certain things. And that awareness made me a bit more mature. Hence, the man you see. And so what you have is that history is going towards north. There's a force that's coming towards from the south. These two forces collide, and they create a lot of uncertainties. You know, everything is like upside down. And you think that the depression, the misery is never going to go away. You're always going to be in the same place until you die. And lo and behold, certain events happen in life. You run into someone interesting, or you take a couple of classes, you read a book, or you just grow, you know, mature psychologically through life. And then someone asks you, well, how did you become the way you are? And you say, if it wasn't for the things I went through, I would never be the person I am today. That's basically what Hegel says. You know, I think if you read the book of Job, if Job knew how all of his sufferings will eventually make him feel, and how ultimately he'll come to experience God, he would never complain. And we would never have the book of Job. Because Job would be very quiet, very modest, very humble. He would simply say, you know what, I'm just going to suspend judgment of all kind. I'm just going to have life crap all over me. And I'm just going to wait and see where it's going to take me. You know. And then of course, near the end, he sees God, he experiences God, he understands what life is all about, who he is, what he is. And then he says, I accept all things under the sun. You know, so that is what I think Hegel is suggesting. It's mostly theoretical. It makes you somewhat passive. It initially attracted Karl Marx, but eventually Marx railed against it, saying, you know, people who are exploited on a daily basis, to tell them to just sit back and, like Jesus Christ, keep telling them, turn the other cheek, it'd be no good. At a certain point, you have to say, you know what, screw history. I don't really care how history is going to unfold 10,000 years from now. I want change right now. So that's what I get from it, and I may be wrong. You know her? From where? Anyone else?
I read a quote. It says something along the lines of everybody is identical in the way that deep down they believe that they're different.
Can you give me some time? Anyone else? I'm sorry? One more time? Okay, yeah. Are we done? Yeah.
Oh, I also saw a quote somewhere. It says, you can't control the
I
events.
apologize, by the way. What is that? Why are you shaking it? Oh. It's come to my attention that I've become a bit more grumpy. Why are you laughing? No, it was actually 4. And it's not helping the situation. It's getting worse. So I apologize for being the way I am. Thank you.
The quote said, you can't control the events around you, but you can control the choices you make. Do you agree or disagree?
That is so
with that?
stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very true. What?
How is it true?
You know, it's like you're going to go out on a date, let's just say, with Matthew. You like his haircut?
All right.
Come on, man. That's no way to speak to someone to whom you're attracted. Good job. Anyway, so as you're leaving the house, your mom stops you and says, Danielle, honey, be yourself. It's a great bumper sticker. And then as you're like heading towards the car, you say, be myself. What the hell does that mean? So you turn around, knock on the door, say, Mom, what do you mean be myself? Well, honey, just be yourself. Oh, okay. And so you go out with Matthew and you're yourself. But then you read the Bible and you realize it's like 5,000 pages all about discovering yourself. So, oh, well, my mom just gave me a bumper sticker. I didn't know it's so complicated. That's the problem with bumper stickers. They look good. They sound good. You know, it's like going out with Kim Kardashian. You like her? You just say no because you can't get her, but that's besides the point. It's you know, it's one of those things that when you can't reach something, you say, oh, no. I would never want to become a millionaire. Money is bad. Yeah, because you can't get any. Now, besides the point, the truth is Kim Kardashian is like a wonderful bumper sticker. Then you hang out with her and you say, where do you want to go? And you say, how about In-N-Out? In-N-Out? Fuck that. Like, let's go to somewhere like pricey. Where? I know a place in Italy. You got a plane? Plane? No. And you realize even though she looks really good on the outside, she's really, really complex. And not in a good way. So that's the problem with bumper stickers. What was the bumper sticker?
You can't control the events.
You can't control the environment. You know, sometimes I don't want to control myself. Sometimes I just want to get angry. Sometimes just controlling yourself is not to your benefit. Sometimes you want to raise your hand and say, this class sucks, man. I woke up at like 6 in the morning. I took a 2-hour shower. I came to class looking good just for you, my instructor. But you suck. Your lectures are interesting. You're uninteresting. This is tormenting. It's torture. And that anger kind of pushes me back. I'll go back to my office saying, well, I'm doing my students wrong. Maybe I should change the way I am like talking or I'm being. That's a good anger. I think as long as there is education or awareness behind the emotions you express, you'll be fine. I'll give you, this is an example from history. Do you mind? No. Good. There's a guy whose name is Epicurus. No, is it Epictetus? Yes, Epictetus the Stoic. Are you texting me?
I'm just writing some notes.
Oh, yes. Well, Epictetus is a Stoic philosopher, and Stoicism basically argues that, can you control Trump? No. Can you control me? No. Can you control the weather? No. Can you control the gas prices? No. You can't control any of that stuff. Can you control me as your husband who comes home drunk on a daily basis? The answer is no. And all these different forces in your life, do they have the power to inspire awful emotions about you, where you hate your life, you hate yourself, you hate your kids, you hate just being born, you hate God, everything? Yeah. All the forces around you have the power to create the most poisonous emotions inside you. You can't change the things on the outside, but you can change your emotions. But for that to happen, you need a lot of education. First, it's going to take you a long time, okay, for you to say, Amir, my husband, I love him, but he's an alcoholic. You're going to have a lot of hope, a lot of fantasies. We're going to go to AA together. We're going to read the Bible together. You're going to take me to your parents so your father can talk to me about the harms of being an alcoholic. You're going to do all those things. So the first 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you're going to be abused by me. And you're going to assume that you have the power to change me. Do you have any idea what addiction is? No. Do you have any idea what routine or habits are and how powerful they are? No. Do you know how difficult it is for me to overcome any habits? The answer is no. You don't know any of those things. All you're guided by are some ridiculous, infantile, stupid fantasies. Until you come to this path where there's a big sign that says dead end. You say, this is hopeless. I can't leave him because he's a money-making machine. Where am I going to go with 25 kids? I have no house, I have no money, I have no education, I have no power in life. So you're going to stay with me. Not because you love me, for the sake of the kids. How long did it take you to get to this point? 10 years, 20 years. But you're going to start doing something different. You know that I'm going to come home at 5 o'clock. Okay? And you know when I come home, I'm going to be drunk. And I'm going to scream and yell and shout. And it's going to be abusive towards you and the kids. What are you going to do? At 5, you're going to pick up the kids and go somewhere fun. Maybe the park. Maybe Sky Zone. Maybe to the theater. What are you doing now? Well, if you place your physical body in a different physical location, you will have a different set of emotions. Now you can control the environment. But it took you many, 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 many years. This idea that you have as you're driving to your house and there's a car that says, well, you can't change this, but change yourself. Do you know how difficult that is? You really have to come to dislike the emotions that I create inside you. Not just dislike, hate. And it takes us a long time to get to the point of hate. Because why? First, you're a Christian. And you have this ridiculous notion that you need to continuously forgive me. You're being abused on a daily basis, you keep forgiving me. The kids are being harassed and you give them a pep talk. So, Epictetus was a slave. And he had a really, really crappy owner. And one day the owner comes home and he's really, really upset. So he grabs his arm and keeps twisting it. Now, usually when someone is physically abusing you. You go, "Ow, please, it's too much. Too much pain, it's going to break." Right? Epictetus expresses nothing. He's mute. After like 10 minutes of being harassed, he kind of just turns around, looks at the owner and says, "Listen, I don't mind what you're doing. I'm just here to tell you that if you keep twisting my arm, it's going to break, and then I can't wash your dishes. If you're willing to wash your own dishes, continue twisting my arm, it's fine." Because he knows that he has no power over the owner. The only thing he can do is control his emotions and the way he wants to express himself. But that's Epictetus. He's like a practical philosopher. He's not some kid in a car driving when there is traffic and you being in the car consumed with frustration, irritation, anger because there is traffic. And lo and behold, there is this bumper sticker. Can't change God, change yourself. And you're pacified for just 1 minute. But this idea of being pacified, it's not educated. It's just an inspired moment. It's like having an emotional orgasm that inspires you. You know, and then things happen, you forget, and you go back to being your old stupid self. It's good, and it's true what it says. It's just missing a lot of steps. Karl Marx is great. He just doesn't talk about human nature as much. And this idea of change, Erica? Hello. Do you know much about sloth? Like being lazy? Sometimes you go home with the desire of going to the backyard and exercising. But you say, I'd rather sit back and just watch a good movie. Sloth. How do you overcome intellectual sloth? That you have to write an essay for this class, and it requires about 5, 6, 10 hours of like serious reflection, thinking, studying, researching. It's not about your body anymore. It's about your ability to sit back and read something and try to process, try to understand, and then express it in a piece of paper. And after all, you just give up. Just too much. Sloth. This idea that you have on the bumper sticker, you really need to have superhuman like faculties to be able to overcome habits. To just not care about the forces out there. It's just too much. Yeah. Is it, Arvid? Yeah, Erica? Okay. Anyone else? John? You have time, don't worry. Yeah. Richard? Matthew?
Does it make you a bad person for wanting to walk away from a relationship when there's much trauma? But if you're, let me rephrase that. If you're,
Let me rephrase it for you. Forgive me.
sorry.
So, like you and I are hanging out. I tell you I'll call you at 6, but I never do. And because you're lonely, pathetic, miserable, you sit by the phone, but the call never comes. Then I run into you and I say, I'm sorry, my dog ABCD, I'll call you tonight about 5. And again, because you're lonely, pathetic, miserable, you sit again by the phone, but the call never comes. Then again, I run into you at Pete's Coffee. I'm so sorry, my mom died. I'll call you tonight at 4. And so, is this what you're talking about?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay. What is that?
What are you talking about?
What? What do you say? Sorry, it just... So, you know this bumper sticker that Elise shared? You have to be profoundly self-sufficient. And self-sufficiency creates a good amount of detachment, indifference. That whether I am in your life or not, you'll be okay the way you are. You know, there are, of course, moments where you realize your own poverty, that there are certain things out there that you do need. And that in itself, I mean, because you're a human being, you can't really be like God, if there is such a thing, being all-powerful and self-sufficient, all those things. You and I have needs. And despite all the effort you make in your short little life to make yourself as sufficient as you possibly can, you're going to encounter moments where you suffer from certain poverties. And you kind of reach out for help. Okay? Now, you were all sufficient before you met me. I mean, that's what generally is said about men and women. All men imagine themselves to be very, very sufficient until they run into a woman. I mean, think about that for a moment. All men assume themselves to be perfect until they meet a woman. And then they become infatuated, and they fall in love, and they realize, oh man, without this woman, I can't survive. Okay? So, you and I run into each other, and all of a sudden you recognize a poverty that you weren't aware. Okay? That poverty makes you a beggar, very much like a homeless person you see out there seeking money or food or whatever. In your case, you're seeking me, or I'm seeking you. Now, what happens to homeless people? Sometimes you give them something, most often you pass them by. The truth is, because in human relationships, powers are never going to be equal. In other words, you like me, I don't like you as much. That makes me more powerful than you are. In other words, I don't need you the way you need me. So I have the power to keep you dangling along. And that frustrates you. And remember, this idea that live in the moment, have no expectation, is bullshit. In human relationships, you will expect things. That's how it is. Your father owes you love. Your father owes you money. Your father owes you a roof over your head. The idea that you turn to be 18, not having any of those components given to you by your parents, and then somehow you go to a therapist's office and he or she tries to pacify you either intellectually or through drugs, it's just complete nonsense. It may be good later on in life, but you need to understand injustice a little bit. You need to be angry about it in an educated way, not just throw a temper tantrum like an infant. Now, first, it takes a long time for anyone to become self-sufficient. In other words, if you have a fridge in your house that's filled with food, for the most part when it comes to your belly, especially if you know how to cook, you're self-sufficient. You don't need Costco. You don't need Safeway. There are going to be moments where you say, you know what, I need to make myself a dosa or samosa or chicken tikka masala or a falafel. And you open the fridge and realize you just don't have the ingredients. Then you become insufficient. Then you go to Trader Joe's and you buy the stuff, you come home, you make it. And you have falafel for the next week. Okay. Now, the idea that honey, be yourself, you can't yet be a self. What you are is a house divided unto itself. There are too many of you. If you've seen the movie The Last Samurai, there's a scene where this young kid goes to Samurai in Making, Tom Cruise, and tells him, too many minds. Too many minds. You think about yourself as a white man. You think yourself as a soldier. You think yourself as someone who murdered a lot of Native Americans. You think yourself as a prisoner, as a this, as a that. Too many minds. That's why you can't beat up this guy. Be focused. Be single-minded. And all of a sudden, he hones everything that lives inside him to a single point. And then he fights this very proficient samurai. And now there is equality. Okay. Right now, and remember what happens to Tom Cruise in the movie. I mean, you have to go through an hour and a half of the movie until that scene comes about. When this young kid looks at Tom Cruise after a lot of training, lots of education about the samurai culture. And then he says, listen, you got too many minds. And he's at a place where Tom Cruise is able to hear and to understand and then to apply. So these are stages that he has to go through that most of us can't do in like many lifetimes. Okay. If one of the nice things about becoming self-sufficient is that there is a part of you that recognizes your value. In other words, if everybody in this class is telling raunchy jokes and you want to talk about Karl Marx, there are only two options. You either become a bulldozer, you scream and you say, can we talk about Karl Marx to shut the rest of us down? Or you realize that we are too much of a buffoon as a group. We are stupid, we are infantile, you're far too mature for us, so you keep your mouth shut. You remain mute because we are not worthy of you. And should you choose either option, it means that there is something about you that has matured, that says, you know what, I don't enjoy these kinds of conversations. You know, I'm here for an hour and 15 minutes. I want my time to be spent in a way that's valuable, meaningful. And you guys are destroying it. And when you realize that despite many of your tries, we remain unchanged, you either pack up your stuff, leave, you stay here, and you say, you know what, I'm going to take their abuse. You know, the way what the saying is, usually saints take their abuse in silence, you know, and you just keep refining your interior. Every time anger comes up and you want to express it, you push it down, and that requires a lot of awareness and self-control. So use this environment to kind of refine who you are, what you are on the inside. So should you be sitting by the phone waiting for my call and that call never comes? There are a couple of things you can do. You can either do what Aesop taught us in Sour Grapes, that when something is unreachable, eventually you walk away saying, well, she probably has a lot of trauma inside. You know, why the hell would I want to spend time with her and waste my time for the next 5 years trying to figure out how to help this woman? Forget her. You walk away. And you don't do this because you understand who she is and what she is. You do this because it's unreachable. And it's the best coping mechanism for you. You walk away and you create some excuses. Okay. The other is that you understand that you're at a certain place in life where you're in fact ready for a good, solid relationship. That when you say you're going to call someone, you will call them. When you say you're going to email someone, you will email them because your words have value. It's a promise. And you respect what you say. And when you realize that this is a woman who keeps telling you I'll call, but she never does, she doesn't really know what she's talking about. And it's just not limited to her telling you that I'll call you. It's everywhere in her life. And through that understanding, you'll walk away. This is America, and you're young. You're going to run into a lot of broken people. You want to have a fling, have a fling. You want to have a good time, have a good time. But you can't build a house with anyone who's not in the right place. And that may even include yourself. And it's something that you know already. Focus on your school, get a nice job, save a lot of money. When you're 35, then the right people will come your way. And then you will know exactly what you do. It's always best to go into Safeway with a list in hand. And it's something that has been researched, you know, plenty of times, that people who just go in there because they're bored and they only want to get milk, they come out having spent like $1,000. If on the other hand you go in there knowing full well the only thing you really need is just milk, and you focus on that, you just go in there, grab some milk, maybe some bananas, and come out. When you're poor, almost everybody becomes an option. When you're rich, on the other hand, you know what you want, you know what qualities you want in another human being. Then, you live in a gated community. You will only accept certain people to your house. I also know once you've been caught, it's very difficult to reason your way out. If someone has caught your attention and you've taken the bait, it doesn't matter if Jesus Christ comes down and says, listen, she's no good for you. Jesus may be right, but he can't reach your heart and all the emotions and excitement, intensity that lives in it. You just want to be with this woman, and that's the end of the story. And if that's your situation, the truth is, there is no escape from it. You live in this place for a while until the emotions subside. You should do what the Inuits do, or what people do in some Arab countries. When there's a sandstorm or a snowstorm, it's like when your emotions are showering you with intense feelings. And the idea of you trying to make rational decisions to where you need to go, what you need to do, it's not possible. It's blinding. The storm is far too thick. So you know what these people do? They just sit. They sit and sit and sit patiently until the storm passes away. It'll eventually pass away, but you just have to wait. And this is not the sort of culture that teaches you patience for a variety of different reasons. First, abundance, privilege, technology, they all join hands to make sure that you have the remote in your hand, and every 10 seconds you're going to flip through channels. That's what we do to TV, that's what we do to people, that's what we do with ideas. We just flip through them very quickly. So if you're infatuated, there is nothing anyone can do. I remember Hussein having come to the car wash once. You know who Hussein is, right? And so I tell him, Hussein, I like this girl. He says, who is it? I said, well, I'm kind of shy to tell it. Tell it to me. So, okay. Well, our friend who comes to our gathering, he's been coming for the past 10 years, Mehdad. Yeah, it's his sister. He looks at me and says, his sister? You like your sister? Yeah. She smokes. Yeah, but I like her. And she doesn't care about these ideas. Yeah, I like her. He says, okay, before we continue, do you like her or do you love her? I said, what's the difference? He says, if you like her, I can convince you somehow not to like her as much. If on the other hand, you have fallen in love with her, there isn't much I can do. If you've become infatuated with this young, crazy infantile of a woman, there isn't anything anyone can do to save you. If you like her, on the other hand, you can manipulate the way you think and feel until you look at her one day and say, what a piece of shit. Does that? Yeah. قیمت هر کاله میدانی که چیست، قیمت خود را ندانی ابلهی است. That you know the price of everything out there, but you don't know your own price, your own value. Don't spend your youth and energy and passions and excitements and inspiration on someone who's not worthy of you. I would share with you a very interesting exercise, but it's not very appropriate. You had your hand up, Danielle.
I did, but I kind of
Forgot.
answered it in my own mind, but I'll start asking.
Okay.
Is it like morally wrong to value some friendships more than bloodline?
I think there's a stage for all of us where you walk away from your family. I'm not talking about physically walking away. Emotionally, they can no longer nourish you the way they used to. You know, something that happens to siblings from the age 0 to about 5 or 6 or 7 or 8, they're very, very close, very close. And then they hit like 10 or 11, and all of a sudden, hormonally, psychologically, everything about them changes. And the sibling that they have loved for the past like 10, 11 years, now they begin to like hate. Do you have a sister? Yeah, but I don't really like her. I haven't spoken to her for like years. And then time passes and you gravitate towards friendships. You know, you want validation from the outside. And then time passes and something happens to you. You become a bit more mature. Things happen to you and you realize that, very much like a prodigal son, that the only people who are really there for you is the sister you haven't talked to for 5 years, or the mother you haven't seen for 20 years, or the father who's never been part of your life. And all of a sudden you realize as you age, you gravitate more towards your family, your blood, than strangers. Now that's usually how it happens. Are there exceptions to the rule? Absolutely. But is it normal what you're saying? Yeah, it's very normal. Yeah. And it takes time for you to kind of see the value in your family. The other thing is, friendships are tough, and we often have the wrong friends. I have had this particular person, acquaintance, who's been depressed for 20 years. For all the years that I've known this person, I've always told her, can you please get some new friends who are not depressed, who are functional? Because when you are a certain way, you gravitate towards people who have the same qualities that you do. So what happens when I'm depressed and you're depressed? What are we going to talk about? How great life is? No. We're going to talk about your depression, and I'm going to talk about my depression. And you're going to talk about your past, I'm going to talk about my past. And what's going to happen? Well, your past gets reinforced, my past gets reinforced, right? And then depression balloons, and then we say, thank you. This has been a great conversation. It is true that you have released some tension, but you walk a bit more deeper, or dive a bit more deeper in the world of depression. If on the other hand, I was healthy, but you were not, and you wanted to be my friend, I don't want to be around the doom and gloom all the time. I'm going to demand that you make some changes, change some habits, and that's going to be tough for you, okay? Now, if you were to do as I say, you'd be depressed for maybe 2 more years, and then you can overcome it, okay? Which means that you have to kind of have a different kind of lifestyle, different kind of friends, different thoughts, different emotions, and that's too difficult for you. So we gravitate towards people who are like us. At your age, you can't have good friends. I mean, by that I mean you can have friends who will encourage you to have stronger family ties, stay in school. These are good friendships. But oftentimes, because you're like 19, 20 and you're pleasure driven, you want just to have fun, you want to suck the marrow out of life. And because this is a culture where no one really has the stamina to wait too long for the right kind of pleasures, you know. In other words, if you stay in school, it's going to be misery for about 4 years. Then you'll get a diploma. That joy will last for about 10 seconds. But that's how long you had to wait to get a taste of a 5-second pleasure, 4 years. And you're going to be harassed by the educational system from the moment you walk into the time you get out. Then you're going to be miserable looking for a job. Then you'll be excited because someone says, I'm going to give you an offer, you know. Then you'll be excited for the paycheck. And you don't mind the cubicle. After about 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, you'll realize you're going to be miserable in this job. Okay? And that's the price we pay for the sort of pleasures that have some value. In other words, degrees in school, they'll keep you rich for the rest of your life. Having a savings account, they'll protect you for the rest of your life. being good to your parents, despite the fact they shit all over you, they'll protect you until the time you die. Okay? So, again, because this is a young culture and the sort of narratives we have about what happiness, what joy is, what pleasure is, what it means to be a self, because they're all like ridiculous, there's a good chance that you're just going to have the sort of happiness and pleasure given to us by like Lil Wayne and Beyonce and Justin Timberlake and, you know, all those folks. Brad Pitt and Kim Kardashian and big lips and big this and big that. So, my recommendation for a good friendship is find someone who's really, really mature and they're around like 60 or 70. The tragedy of hanging out with a 70-year-old is that they're going to ruin you. Every time you say, well, I'm going to like hang out with my 20-year-old friends. What are you, stupid? I'm going to go dance. What are you, more stupid? I'm going to buy a Tesla. You're 20, just ride your bicycle around. You know, they're always kind of looking at you saying, how is it going to be like at the age of 50? They're always looking at the better future you. You know, and then by the time you're 25, you realize you think like a 70-year-old, you feel like a 70-year-old, and you act like a 70-year-old. The tragedy of that is that you're 25, at a certain point you say, you know what, I want a companion. You descend to Oakland. And who do you want to hang out with? Well, you want to hang out with a woman who's like your age, right? 25-year-old. And you say, so what do you want to do with your life? But you, as a 25, feel and think like a 70-year-old. At 25, you can't hang out. So you're, you know, the only option you have is find a woman in there, like in her, I don't know, late 40s, late 50s. And, you know, if you're like really intelligent, you'll find an old woman who's really rich. So she could die, and then you could. The problem with that is women just don't die. They outlive their man by like almost 20 years. I mean, talk about injustice. And you thought God was compassionate. So anyone else? Stephen?
Do you believe influencers these days, whether it's Kim Kardashian or anyone on TikTok, are becoming more and more fake?
I don't have TikTok. I do watch Kim Kardashian on a daily basis, just as an inspiration pill.
Oh, yeah, I don't have TikTok either, but
Yeah.
saying, like, in general.
I mean, I like Cristiano Ronaldo. I mean, have you seen his six-pack?
Cool, Morris.
Yes.
Do you think, like, because the Bible or Genesis is so
By what?
the Bible or the Genesis is so misogynistic, what sometimes people say, has formed the way women are treated today. Because their seed basically was like really put the people because it was based on her because she did the wrong. And that was it.
So,
And then in other stories, it's also like that Pandora was made to other, what is it, pain to men.
forget the Bible for a moment. Imagine you and I are married. Can you imagine that? You can? Huh. Now, imagine if you have a huge plot of land, and let's say it's in the Middle East. It rains like twice a year, so the ground is really, really hard. Okay. I'll give you a shovel, and I'll take a shovel as well. And let's just say you and I are the same size physically. For how many hours do you think you're able to till the ground? 1 hour? I can do it for 5. So while on the farm, I say to you, Erica, my love, can you go inside the hut and make us some food? Is that a wrong thing for me to say? Do you want me to like what? Till the ground for like 10 hours and then go home and cook? Is that what you want? Or how about, Erica, honey, can you go in and like nurse the kids? Are you going to like what? Fault me for not having boobs? I mean, there are all these what we call injustices in life, you know. And so when we were more agriculture people, you know, and I'm not talking about the exceptions where you find a group of women who are like warriors and men happen to be just, you know, flimsy a little bit. For the most part, you know, life has been difficult. Men have been at the front and center of any battle, whether with like physical life or other parts. Women have been, for the most part, staying home, taking care of what society assumes to be more valuable, raising the kids, cooking, cleaning, gossiping, all those things. There is another aspect to this. If you were to come to class, and again, forgive me, if I was to look at and say, Erica, can you please dress well? Put some makeup on, look pretty. And do you have the right to tell me, Amir, well, you know, you look like shit. You come to class unshaven. You don't wear lipstick or eyeliners, you know. Say, listen, I'm a man. There is something about my psychology that is desperate to see beauty. Women define beauty in a very, very different way than men do. You know, and that's again another imbalance in life. You know, I'm not saying all these things because I am misogynistic. The truth is, I like things that are attractive. I mean, I don't want to go into a house that's messy and cluttered and smelly. When you go to the bathroom and it smells bad, do you not open the windows? Of course you do. When you look at a human being who looks bad, do you not look at someone else who looks good? There is something about us inherently that we just enjoy being around things that look good and smell good. Now, we have this warped sense of like equality and justice these days, you know, that women should just be like men in a variety of different ways. You know, if a man wears pants, well, women should wear pants. There's nothing wrong with those things. But it doesn't make for misogyny. It's complicated. I mean, human beings have a very complex psychology. I mean, I just want you to look good. And if you want to categorize me as misogynistic, be it. Casero, what's Daniel doing? Playing with his phone. Does that remind you of someone you know? Anyone else? What question?
The one in the beginning, about the quote.
What was it?
Everybody is identical in the way that they believe that they're different.
I've never heard it. But do you have a sibling? What? 1 or 2? Older, younger?
Younger, by like 7 years.
Okay. And you both have the same parents? Do you sometimes feel that your parents, is the brother or sister? Do you sometimes feel that your parents are different with your brother than they are with you? Why? Temperamentally, you guys are different. Your personalities are different. And these are things we can't really control. These are things we can't really create. They just come the moment you're born. And so what you have is your brother has parents that you don't recognize, and you have parents that your brother doesn't recognize. Once in a while, during dinner, for example, the five of you sit together, the four of you, and you have lunch and you have a conversation. You break bread emotionally and everyone kind of joins. And now you have a community. But for the most part, parents are different with their own kids. They're very different when the interaction with you than they are with their brother and with their son. And so, in that sense, all of us in this class are different. Add to it the fact that there is this other thing called pride inside us. It's one of those 7 deadly sins. You look yourself in the mirror and you like the way you are. You like the way you look. And even if you're like hideously ugly, you will try to refine different parts of you. If you can't, you'll fall into depression. And then your parents give you attention that your sister don't really get that much. Okay? So if you're different in all sorts of ways, add to it the fact that the way you define relationships is going to be very different than me, your brother. That makes us different. The way you love is different than the way I love. The sort of taste buds you have very different than the ones that I have. Okay. Now, we're also talking about you having a brother. Men function very differently inwardly as well as outwardly than women do. There are lots of things that make us very unique. Now, all that aside, what, for example, aspirin does, it doesn't really care what sort of a headache you have and how it came about. Aspirin has this universal remedy to it. Whether you're a man or a woman, straight, gay, okay, he, she, they, it, them, they, all that, okay, it doesn't really matter. Once you take aspirin, your headache will go away. One of the things that advertisement has recognized, or market researchers, because they don't really see us as human beings, they see us as consumer of goods. We're just puppets. And they want to kind of like inject stuff inside us and then push that button and then we'll kind of gravitate towards Pepsi or Coke or chips or whatever. Okay? One of the things that they recognize is that the undercurrent of everything that makes us human, that is very similar. All that they need to do is create this desire. Once the desire has been created inside us, all of us will gravitate towards it. Now, that means that some people walk to Safeway, some people will run to Safeway, some people will take the bus, some people will Uber, some people will grab 2 bags of chips, some people will grab 1 bag of chips, some people will grab Doritos, whereas others will grab Kettle. Your taste buds will create different tastes, but your desire for food remains the same. The core desires are the same. How we approach them are different. You know, like the White Brotherhood, for example, the Nazis. Okay? They like people, they just like white people. The Black Muslim Brotherhood. They too like people, they just like black people. The common denominator is, I don't like being alone, and I like to be in a social pack. Then you have people who are a bit more evolved. You know, anyone who sits at my table is welcome. Anyone who knocks on my door finds it open. Since you're a young woman in hopes of one day soon getting married and having children, sorry, I was about to throw up. Do men look different in body? Absolutely. Do they differ in temperament? Definitely. Do they differ in... Yeah. Ultimately, all men, when they look at you, what exactly is it that they want? Do they want to know your history? No. Do they want to know your name? No. Your age? No. What do all men have in common?
They're all disappointed.
True that, yes. They are not disappointing. Let me correct you. You are disappointing. Whose fault is it that you choose the wrong men? You're just uneducated. You keep choosing losers and you say, oh, men are fucked up. No, you're fucked up. I mean that in the kindest and no, I'm serious, you know. Going back to what we talked about with Matthew, is that if you were to have a different self-image and if you were to expect different things for yourself, in other words, you say, you know what, I want to go out with someone who at least has his bachelor's degree. Let's just say that. Most of the people, if all the people in this room, would be a no option for you. They're all losers. Look at them. Okay? Now, let's say you have your master's degree. And let's say you come to a place where you say, you know what? The man who's going to walk into my life, he needs to have at least a master's degree. Now, let's say also your parents have told you, listen, any man who walks into your life and you fall in love with, make sure he has a job and has had that job for 20 years. So the more you know, the more you expect, the more maturity that lives inside you, the more you expect from the people walking into your life. If on the other hand, you set the bar down here, well, what are you going to get? Shit. If you get down here, you'll get educated shit. I mean, they're both smelly, but one is just a bit more educated. You know, an uneducated person shits while leaving the bathroom door open for all to see. Someone who's educated will go to the bathroom, close the door, lock the door, shit, opens the window and comes out. I know it's a little bad analogy, but it works today. So, the only person you need to really blame is yourself. I mean, you can't hang out with a 2-year-old and say, why does a 2-year-old like trip all the time? It's a 2-year-old. What the hell do you expect? But here's the thing that you need to understand about relationships. We walk into them through feelings, and there is nothing wrong with it. I mean, look, imagine you came to me after class and you said, Amir? I said, yes, Rosalind. Did you know there's a movie named after you? You say, Amir, yes? You know, this is my 5th class with you. Yes? Is it about your grade? No, it's more complex. What is it? I ain't got time. I like you. And then you sit and cry. I say, Rosalind, what's going on? I lied to you. I don't like you. What is it? I love you. I say, oh, I haven't slept for years. Why? I think about you all the time. I mean, this morning I had diarrhea. I wanted to focus on my diuretic tradition, but I was just thinking about you while I was diarrheaing, if it's a word. So, oh man, you're really just consumed. Yes! Now, do you think about our age difference? No. Do you think about the fact that I'm close to death? No. All you know is that you love. Now, if I happen to be a charlatan, lonely, pathetic, someone who wants to take advantage of you, I'd say, you know what, let's go to Pete's Coffee today and let's just talk. Okay. How about if I meet you there around 8:30 at night? You say, okay, that sounds great. And then I meet you at Pete's Coffee and it's closed. You say, oh, I'm so sorry, Rosalind, it's cold. Why don't we go home? I have this beautiful espresso machine. I'll make you espresso. Okay. And I drive very slow. By the time we get to our house, it's 1 a.m. We're tired, I'm tired. I say, you take the bed, I'll take the sofa. And you, of course, being a woman version of Jesus Christ. She said, no, 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 no. Let's lay in the same bed together. We'll put a pillow right between us. And then, of course, I would encourage those feelings you have for me, and eventually I'll have feelings for you. And, you know, the more evolved way of dealing with this is this. Knowing full well that human beings first become emotionally attached, and then rationality then gets into the game. I say, Rosalind, listen, I appreciate what you've said. Even I like you. Let's just say I too love you. But listen, you're 24. You have like 60 years ahead of you. You know, I am rejecting you. Yes. Will you be depressed? Yes. Will you cry and maybe even seek a therapist? Yes. But after about 6 months or so, you'll overcome it. You'll recover. You'll be fine. Okay? But you need to know that I just had a triple bypass. There are certain things I can do, many things I can't do anymore. I don't like to travel. I don't like to talk. I don't like to watch TV. I don't like to mingle with people. I especially don't like to hang out with 20-year-olds. So if you want to be with me, there are all sorts of things that you have to sacrifice. And the truth is, it's not fair. And then I have to come and meet your parents. And I happen to be older than your father by 10, 15, 20 years. And I don't think my heart can take that. I'll probably just have like a heart attack right there and die. Okay? So to save you, to save your youth, to save all the things that you deserve to experience as a young person, just go your way, live your life. And my office door is always open, my home is always open. Whenever you want, just come by. And should you find the right person, I'll come in there as the priest. And I'll say, you know, may you have a miserable life at Joe. What makes relationships complicated is because we are feeling animals. First you look, then you like, then you become intimate, then life happens, then you think. And then you say, oops, it's a mistake. But now emotionally you're entangled, physically you're entangled, financially you're entangled, more importantly, emotionally you're entangled. And the problem with emotions, you create history with them. And you're being held hostage by that history. I can't tell you how often I think about walking away from my life. But then I think about my kids, their future, their past, all the stories that them and I have built. And that makes me feel guilty. That guilt makes me a hostage. And if I was to ask you to approach relationships in a very rational way, you're not there yet. I wish you would be, but you're not there. And for you to approach anything rationally, go into relationships, invest a lot of feelings, get hurt. Recover, go into another one. Invest a lot of feelings, get hurt. Go into another one. Do this by the time you're 40. At the age of 40, you realize your body is screaming for babies. Okay? You look at your life. It's rich on the outside, but inwardly you're poor. Now you say, okay, I want to figure out what sort of man I want in my life. And you say, you know what? I want a man, not because I need a man. I want a man because I want to have babies. The man simply becomes a footnote, a supplement. Now you approach it rationally. If you have been hurt by another human being, it's because, well, you went into it for the wrong reasons. You're like a prodigal son. I mean, that prodigal son story in the Gospel of Luke, it really applies to virtually every aspect of life. Every time you feel that you have wasted something is because you didn't have clear vision. And there's nothing wrong with it, as long as you can recover. Yes, Casera, your hand is up. I'm going to mess up your name, forgive me. What? Jasraj? I was going to say Jasvinder. And Jasvinder is a girl's name. But, yeah, you seen sex? Yeah, because when I went to Sac State 50 years ago, I had a good friend, her name was Jasvinder. She got married to a guy from India. She left him. But go ahead.
No, we were just talking about like sports and everything.
was just wondering, like, at this stage, you know, like,
You've seen the movie V for Vendetta? Have you seen the movie The Matrix? Have you seen the movie English Patient? Have you seen Devdas? Have you seen Gabi Khashi Gabi Gham?
oh, yeah.
Fuck.
I really got one.
Is it true that different movies inspire different emotions about you? So if, for example, you watch the movie Devdas with Shah Rukh Khan and Aishwarya Rai, or you watch the movie Gabi Khushi Gabi Gham, okay? What you realize is, as you watch this 4-hour movie with all the dancing and the singing and beautiful acting and beautiful people there, it makes you think about the caste system. It makes you think about the harshness of fathers and the softness of mothers. It makes you think about love and the sort of transgressions you make when you're in love. It makes you think about why would parents desire to harm their kids even though they know they're in love? Why is the caste system so important? What does it take at the very end of the movie where Amitabh Bachchan, the father, looks at Shah Rukh Khan, the son, and apologizes? What does it take for the other family members to come in and kind of glue the relationships together that has been fragmented into 1,001 pieces? That's one movie. The other movie is, I don't know, let's just say you watch Jurassic Park. Thank you. Now, Jurassic Park inspires a different set of thoughts and emotions. Okay? If you were to sit back, okay, now remember, if you're taking your kids to watch Jurassic Park, you're building a relationship with your kids. Okay? Because Gabi Khushi Gabi Gham, the storyline is far too complicated for a 5-year-old. Okay? Now, absent that, if I was to ask you which kind of movie you like, there's a good chance that you're going to tell me Jurassic Park wasn't too bad. But the truth is, Gabi Khushi Gabi Gham, it allowed me to kind of get in touch with my culture, see my own people, my own dancing, my own music, okay? The sort of realities that live in the Indian Hindu culture. And it made me a bit more reflective. And the point I'm trying to make is this. If there are areas of your life that you don't enjoy, change the images. In other words, if you're hanging out with 18-year-old friends who, at the end of the day, make you feel bad and you feel as if you wasted a lot of time, well, do an experiment. Hang out with 25-year-olds. See what sort of emotions and thoughts they create. If that still doesn't work out for you, hang out with a 40-year-old and see what that does for you. And you realize that the more mature the physical space, the different ways that influence your thought patterns and the ways your emotions come up. And that's the only recommendation I have, okay? Now, I would say this last thing and then we'll go home. Is it time? Allahu Akbar. Why don't you come to the office Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday? I'm there about 4:30. Just send me an email. I'll come down, open the Tower building for you. You can come up and sit in my office and read a book. And I have a nice little cushion. You can even take a nap. But you can talk. I don't want to be bothered. And don't look at me. And I'll make you a cup of tea. And I have bread and some peanut butter and jelly. I'll make you a peanut butter jelly sandwich. What? Don't do that. No. But that was just a joke. Now, the reason why I say this is because first, I am 62. Third, I like my environment to be very, very quiet and very, very serious and very, very reflective. If you come to that environment and stay there every single day for the next 4 or 5 months, I assure you something about you will change. But before that change happens, you will resist. It'll be too much for you. First, waking up at 4 in the morning, you say, fuck, waking up at 4 what? Go sit in his office and do what? Nothing? And I don't like lights to be on, so my office is going to be dark. But just, I don't know, read. Just have the book open and pretend as if you're able to read. The point I'm trying to make, there are lots of complexities while that change comes about, and you have to make lots of sacrifices. And every time you want to resist and go back home and sleep, you need to remember your goal. I am here to change. You will forget that goal. I can't tell you how many times Kassera has vowed, promised herself before coming to class, today, I will never look at my phone. And every time she walks in, a complete failure. You forget. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.